That might be the most important one.
Oh, and we're live. Good afternoon. It's Thursday, February 26th, 2026. In-house transportation and be here all week. We have Burlington International Airport with us, representative today. My understanding is they have a potential request for the T-bill or for some other piece. So Jeff, welcome back to the committee. Last year you were here, gave us a nice presentation about the airport, and we're happy to have you back. Let us know what you're up to. Oh, Nick's on the line as well. So good afternoon.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. First, before I allow Nick to introduce himself, I don't get the opportunity to control what he says very often. I want to introduce Alexandra Cohen from my team. She's our marketing assistant, and a lot of the great stuff you see on social media and our websites and everything throws through her, and very appreciative that she was able to join me. And online is Nicholas Longo.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. I know how difficult it is to have somebody digital, especially when there's in person, so I'll keep it brief. You're in great hands with Jeff and Alex, although I do love the view looking over Jeff's shoulders to make sure he's doing a good job, and more importantly, sitting next to a very talented Michelle Boomhauer. So a lot of great connections with this state, and certainly with you all. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of things happening at the airport. My name is Nick Longo. I'm the director of aviation. I've been with the airport now going into my 14th year. And I'm quite excited about all of the progress we're doing. Thank you, Chairman Walker, representatives, for having us here today. And thank you for those that were able to come join us at some of our tours last year. The door is always open. Like I said, we have a lot happening at the airport. Most importantly, it's because of the millions of people that we serve on an annual basis. And that's why some of the things that Jeff is going to be talking about are so important. And that's why we are looking at expansion. We're always open for questions. I'll be online throughout the presentation here, but really, really appreciate just the time. It allowed me to spend a little time with my family today and my 3 kids. So thank you all very much.
All right. Like a showstopper. Get everybody's attention.
I feel slight.
Yes, I need everybody to start agreeing with me from this point on. It's not going to work for some of us. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know now I hear you have a little bit of a time crunch. So, I started late, but we're making up for it with plenty of interruption.
That's great. That's wonderful. I appreciate the time. And thank you, Nick. I provided everybody a quick packet with our new economic impact assessment. I will be referencing a little bit from it, specifically from page 22, if you want to see the comparison. I did provide written testimony. I'm going to read that real quick so it's on record. And then Nick and I are here to answer any questions that you guys have. So Chairman Walker and members of the House Transportation Committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. We recognize the many difficult decisions before you as you craft a difficult transportation budget, and we are grateful for your time and consideration. First, on behalf of the airport administration and the entire team at the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport, I want to express our sincere appreciation for our strong working relationship with the administration, Secretary Flynn and his team, and Michelle over here on my right, as well as members of the General Assembly. It's been really great to get to know a lot of you over the last year or two in my role. The open lines of communications and collaborative spirit are deeply valued and necessary to the continued success of the aviation industry in Vermont. As Vermont's largest commercial service airport, we view ourselves as a critical economic asset to the state and to the broader region, and I've shared a lot of that data with you today in our economic impact assessment, which we just completed. These are fresh off the press, printed Wednesday by my team. In short, in less than 8 years, when our last assessment was completed, we have nearly doubled our economic output and the revenue we generate in both state and local taxes. Since 2018, we've seen a 14.4% increase in total jobs supported by the airport, bringing that total to 5,645. This accounts for a 91% increase in total payroll, providing Vermonters $325.4 million yearly in payroll. The combined airport regional value, which includes economic output and existing replacement value, is 1.9 billion, an 80% increase over 2018. And with that, 1 billion of that is a yearly contribution to the region and to the state. And then on taxes, the airport generated in 2018 roughly $34.5 million in state and local taxes. That number has increased 81% to $62.5 million. And a lot of these numbers are referenced specifically on page 22 of the economic impact assessment. Now, this growth is not accidental. It is the result of strategic investment, partnership, entrepreneurial drive, and a commitment to meeting the evolving demands of Vermont's economy and the tourism sector. The aviation industry is dynamic and highly competitive. As we manage the second busiest airfield in New England in terms of total operations, we are also working to meet the needs of the region's businesses, tourism economy, military partners, and general aviation community. As we often have said, and this is Nick's favorite quote in the world, you can build a mile of road and travel a mile, or you can build a mile of runway and you can travel the world. We are deeply grateful for the state's annual $500,000 allocation to Leahy BTV. These funds are vital. However, today we respectfully request that the committee ensure this allocation is not restricted solely to capital grants, matching grants, or the airport improvement program, but instead be aligned with federal statute, specifically 49 U.S. Code 47133, which allows funds to be used for capital or operating costs of the airport. Current state statute references this provision. However, in practice, when we submit our annual invoice to the state, we are required to provide a detailed accounting tying the appropriation directly to specific grants. We respectfully request that the statute and administrative practice reflects the flexibility allowed under the federal code. Greater flexibility will allow us to deploy these funds where they are most needed, whether for capital match requirements, operational resilience, or strategic investments that strengthens the airport's long-term sustainability. Additionally, while we are not formally requesting an increase in funding today, we do believe the committee should consider the broader fiscal picture of the aviation industry in Vermont. The state's contribution is currently capped at $500,000, with those funds derived from the aviation fuel tax revenue. Based on available estimates, we believe airports generate between 3 and 4 million annually in aviation fuel tax revenue, the majority of which is produced at Leahy BTV. We understand there are ongoing discussions regarding municipal authority to adjust local option tax percentages, and that the implications for aviation fuel tax revenue have been reviewed. To be clear, we do not have a position on this policy discussion. However, because specific figures being cited regarding aviation fuel tax collections, it has prompted us again to seek clarity on the total revenues being generated by this tax. We respectfully request confirmation as to whether a comprehensive accounting has been conducted of the total aviation fuel tax revenues collected statewide and a detailed explanation of how those funds are allocated. Transparency regarding what is generated at Leahy BTV compared to what is appropriated to our airport is essential for long-term planning, both for the state of Vermont and for the airport. Clear data allows us to reasonably forecast capital planning, assess sustainability, and ensure alignment between revenues generated and reinvestment. This is not a new request. Over the years, we have sought a full accounting of aviation fuel tax collections and the resulting balance. And we understand that compiling this information has been often described as complex. However, given the vast majority of aviation fuel sold in Vermont is purchased at Leahy BTV, and given the significant economic engine the airport represents, we believe that a transparent and comprehensive report is both reasonable and appropriate. To be clear, at this time, we are not asking for an increase in our appropriation. However, we do believe that in the future, the state's appropriation to Leahy BTV should more closely align with revenue generated, potentially in the range of 1.5 million. Our goal is simple: to ensure that Vermont's primary aviation gateway has the flexibility and support necessary to continue driving economic growth, supporting thousands of jobs, and connecting our state to the world. And thank you for your consideration, and happy to answer any questions or ask Nick to answer the questions.
Thank you. Representative Burke is.
Yeah, thank you for this. I'm just wondering what happens to that excess money?
From my understanding, Nick, you can chime in here. A lot of that is because the FAA requires that be reinvested in an aviation program that is being distributed throughout the aviation network in the state of Vermont.
Throughout all the different airports.
Yes, yeah,
The state gets the money and distributes it to you.
correct.
Representative White?
Yeah, thank you for this. So, you're asking for a change in how you are allowed to work with the $500,000 annual contribution from the state.
Yeah.
And is that something that requires change in statute or yes?
No, we're not entirely sure.
Okay.
If it's an administrative practice, Michelle and I were having a conversation right beforehand that they're looking into it as well. But we just wanted to clarify and bring to the attention that the federal code allows us to use it for capital or operating costs, and that flexibility is really critical for us right now.
Okay, so federally, you think you're good, it's just whether state-wise,
Yeah.
something that needs to be changed, okay. And then you also, just to make sure we're understanding clearly, so you would just like an accounting of where the fuel tax, that airline fuel tax is going,
Mhm.
and you've been asking for that, but you have not.
What we're asking for is how much is being collected, because
How much
we
is
don't even
collected,
know
where
that.
it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Language itself, or is there any? Did you draft any of the actual language, to send to Ledge Council or not?
We haven't, because it's currently referenced in state statute. And so that's where we're trying to figure out, like, is this administrative practice?
Okay.
Do we need to take a look? But I think the language is.
So I know from when we talked originally about the language request change and
Yeah.
catch all the rest of the pieces. When we get back, then we'll be on a pretty quick time clock, it's there, and we've got a half a dozen or more committee relevant issues. Not to say that we can or can't do it, but, I have to know who we need to hear from and where we're at. So if there's a language request, I know that our Ledge Council is listening. I wasn't sure whether he had to be here or not, but I know he's here. And he's here somewhere. So in the ether, to make sure that if it is something we're able to consider, that it'll be ready.
Our lobbyist, David Mickenberg, has been in contact with Damien on this specifically.
Right. Operating costs, or I'm not sure exactly where the statement that you want to be able to use it for operating costs or
Capital.
as opposed to right now, it's only capital.
It's right now it's being tied to matching grants.
You have trouble with the amount of matching, you don't have enough matching grants to go after?
We could always use more. Nick is always pushing us for more grants. And we a lot of these funds are coming from the FAA, and we're always trying to find new ways to generate revenue, including with our new building that we're opening up in a month, was done with Mass Timber, and we're appreciative of a grant that we received from the Regional Border Commission. It was almost $2 million to help us fund that. So we're always looking around for opportunities. But with the FAA, we need to provide 10% match.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, just, and it's timber, got my attention. So you have a whole building that's, and what's the building, what's in the building?
So we have constructed what we call Project Next, and it's to replace current gates. If you come to our airport, we have a very long, skinny hallway that I affectionately call the finger. That's just not built for today's aviation world. So we've built a whole new terminal. There's very little steel in it. There's a lot of mass timber. We have geothermal, solar. A lot of that is going into the building from a sustainability fund, and we're very proud about that fact.
I'm asking because my son does consulting on mass timber,
Oh, okay.
various places around the country.
That's awesome.
Representative Wild?
Probably knows about it.
I was wondering, do you all plan to kind of use this as sort of burnishing our state bank brand to visitors when they come in and sort of explain, like, look at what you are seeing in Vermont, and we're all about all this stuff, like you have done with some other things in the past.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of my job is being able to brag about everything that we're doing at the airport. In fact, Alex and I drove down in one of our Ford Lightnings today, which we're moving a lot of our fleet to solely electric. We like to brag about that. We're going to start talking about the economic impact, but like all of this is connected. We have a great story to tell. The expansion of beta technologies. It's not just about commercial, it's about everything that's happening at the airport and the 5,600 jobs. And there's a lot of great stories to tell. And part of the need for this flexibility is we have more improvements coming down the pipe that we need. We are already, our load factors are very high in these planes. We need to be able to bring in bigger planes. And right now, the airport, which was built for regional aircraft, your CRJs with, 50, 60 passengers, we need the main lines to come in. And that, I think that's our greatest opportunity right now. It's not necessarily bringing in more flights, it's the larger planes. And the airlines are telling us that.
What is the maximum just at the moment? I'm trying to get an image in my head.
The largest plane that we can
Yeah.
accommodate. Well, every day we get a 767 that lands. It's a FedEx plane. But with our new terminal, what I like about it is it's building flexibility for however the aviation industry evolves. 25 years ago when the airport was built, the industry was doing more flights with fewer, passengers, smaller regional aircraft. And so a lot of the gates tend to be smaller. But now we're seeing the bigger craft coming in. We need the ability, and a lot of our gates can't get up to the size of a 319 even. And in fact, some of our gates we have to shut down to certain sizes because they become unsafe because the tail of the plane might overflow into a taxiway that we need to use, et cetera. So this project it's the second step in a large effort to re-energize and reinvigorate the airport operations. And in 3 to 4 years, we're going to be pushing hard, if not sooner, to be doing the same thing on the other side so we can have more flexibility. And again, with the same sustainability mission with mass timber, solar, geothermal, et cetera.
Thank you. That's a vivid image for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Wells?
You said that new terminal is ready for action in a month?
Yeah, we're hoping to open March 31st. That's our target.
Wow. Great. Restaurant too?
No restaurant in this one, but we did expand our restaurants recently in October. I believe we opened up Kestrel Coffee, which is a wonderful young couple from Chittenden County, right in our what we call the tip, just above security. And that extra coffee jolt in the morning is great for passengers and for staffers like me.
That's great.
Representative Thomas?
So just to understand some history on the state's contribution, so it's capped at $500,000. Has that has it been sort of steadily $500,000 for the past several years, or since when?
So the last few years it has. Nick Longo, would you be willing to chime in with some of the history of this and speak better to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So it historically used to actually be 6% of our total grants. The grants are specifically called the Airport Improvement Program from the Federal Aviation Administration. And that 6%, as you can imagine, ranged all over the place from $500,000 to $1.2 million, depending on, of course, the year and the grant funding. It was changed a few years ago, I believe just before COVID, and then after COVID from 600,000 and then again capped at 500,000. What's really important about the conversation, as Jeff was saying, to use this $500,000 not just tied to AIP FAA grant funding, but also our operating costs, is because sometimes we don't ask for FAA grant fundings. There's a pool of funds that we are entitled to from the Federal Aviation Administration. And generally, we ask for those funds. That's about $3.8 million a year. However, to strategically plan for larger projects in the future, the next couple of years, we're not going to be asking for funding, so we can carry that over and apply for a larger 15-ish million dollar grant using those entitlement funds. So throughout those couple of years that we're not asking for federal funds, that's going to be really important to utilize that $500,000 for our operating costs.
Okay.
Longer answer to your question, but hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, it does, and I really appreciate all that context. And there's a request in here for data on the aviation fuel tax and sort of what percentage is being generated by Leahy International versus others. So I'm assuming that, has that request gone to the tax department, or I'm assuming there's similar challenges with that as what we've heard about in discussing local option taxes, that it's tax at the distributor level as opposed to at the local level. So is that part of the challenge, or is there any, I don't know that that's something that can be addressed through legislative language, but is there any way we can
support in that, or what have been the challenges so far?
Short answer is yes. And Nick can speak because he was there around when we've made these requests in the past, and we do know it is complex to get to. But the point we want to make is the funds generated from this tax have to be reappropriated to aviation. And so we want to make sure that we don't believe that it's not being reappropriated to aviation, but what that number is, how much is being generated at Leahy BTV, and then make sure the contribution to us down the road a little more in line with what we are generating.
Thanks.
Where did that go? Representative Keaton?
Hey, good morning. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. That's what it is. I'm having such a good time. So thank you very much. Do you have an FBO?
Yes,
And more than one or just one?
we have just one.
Just one. And do they have a fuel farm?
Again, we have, yes. Nick, can you speak to the operations of Heritage?
Yep. So, Representative, to answer your question, yes, we have an FBO or a fixed based operator. They handle generally all the ground handling, fueling, de-icing, et cetera, which it sounds like you might know that. And they do have a fuel farm. They have about 125,000 gallons of fuel storage for jet aircraft, and then another 30-ish thousand gallons of regular aviation fuel for piston aircraft.
Thank you. So you got about 130,000. And what's the tax on aviation fuel?
6% from the state, and then there is a 1% local option tax in the city of South Burlington.
I was just thinking of the revenues generated for the state. There's not a 5 cent per gallon tax on that?
I'm unaware of that. Yeah.
Kind of do some of your work. Okay,
We've done a lot of the back of the napkin math as well. We just want to get to that number.
right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, is the money, I apologize for. In the little amount I've heard, you receive $500,000 from the state. And you want to be more equitable, thinking Burlington International actually uses a heck of a lot more fuel than any other airport in the state. Can we calculate it based on what the city of Burlington is realizing, the 1% sales tax through the airport? To figure out how much they're actually using. I'm just saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have to know the price per gallon.
That way. Questions for the witness?
That's
You know, I'm assuming you know what you're sending in 1% sales tax to
So-
the city of Burlington.
we have an idea, yeah,
Okay.
but a lot of that information we actually ironically got from you, and that spurred a lot of the conversation when $86,000 I think was brought up about the state collecting in the local option tax in that 30% portion, and so that would mean, and we've heard this from South Burlington because they collect the tax, you know, they're around $200,000 or so a year. So I'm doing back of the napkin math, and it's like, well, that means they're collecting probably $2.1 million. And I'm not a tax expert or accountant. I'm in marketing. And so that's where I'm like, well, if we think it's between 3 and 4, this number has got to be, we can't be accurate in that this is, you know, $3 or $4 million.
Okay, so that I'm just trying to figure out, if we already know 1% that you're collecting, I think we could figure out what fairly easily. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So that can be figured. You have one supplier you have Heritage Fuel. So all you have to do is go to Heritage Fuel, find out how much they sell out of Burlington, and then you'll know.
And that's a complicated answer as well. And Nick could speak to the, you know, airlines buying in bulk. You know, there's a lot of.
That's right.
Heritage, excuse me, I'm sorry. Heritage is your FBO. They sell all their fuel into Burlington. So they have the numbers. You're shaking your head there, Nick.
Yeah. If I can add some clarity. So Heritage pumps all of the fuel. They don't necessarily purchase or own that fuel. So many of that fuel is owned, purchased by the airlines themselves. and stored at Heritage Aviation.
Okay.
And so
gotcha.
then that's where it gets a little complex with where that tax comes from.
I've seen that before. Okay,
Yep.
thank you very much for clearing
You're-
that
you're
up.
welcome.
We're trying to help.
I appreciate it very much so.
We're trying to get there.
You all set then?
Thank you.
Representative Loudon?
So the tax is levied on fuel at the place where it's pumped. Is that correct? Where it goes into the receiving plane or whatever? Is that how, so when these airlines buy in bulk, I'm just wondering, when is the tax levied? Is it per unit and when it comes out of the pump, or is it at the wholesale level, or this is I see this as why this is a complex question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're in my mind exactly on those questions on how it's levied, because there is a wholesale versus retail pumping. There's all sorts of different things that happen. Some airlines do own it, some do not. So the pumping is and sale is happening, locally. So there's a lot of different nuances to the movement of the fuel.
I would also like to add quickly that we are not related to the tax itself, but we have sustainable aviation jet fuel at our airport. We are selling that currently, and we're one of the first in the region, I believe, to have that. And we're very proud that Heritage worked very, very diligently to make sure that we had that product available for our community.
In fact, we're on a committee at Boston Logan Airport because they're all asking us how we were the first ones to get this sustainable aviation fuel, which cuts greenhouse gas emissions by right now about 30%, and eventually it'll get greater and greater. And eventually fuel will decrease in sales anyways with electrification of aircraft, which of course may be decades down the road. But it is exciting to have that opportunity to be the first to sell sustainable aviation fuel.
To brag about it.
I would like to add a piece just as far as the information related to taxes, and part of the reason why it's not clear. There's a significant, way out of our realm, but there's a significant amount of confidentiality we heard about when towns couldn't get as much information as they'd like about their opportunities in local option tax, because the tax department can't just share everything and anything. And when you're dealing with an environment with, I believe the number was like 10 or 12 or less entities that are purchasing, they aren't allowed to share it for proprietary and competitive and all kinds of areas that are outside of our purview. So we may or may not be able to do anything about that portion of it. But I do recall we went down that a little bit. The confidentiality was a big issue related to any tax disclosure. So we may be able to help her with the request, but we're certainly not going to be anybody who writes a law related to that portion of it. Way outside of our purview in terms of making tax statements.
No, that's a good point. There was a threshold of,
So that was that part.
10 here. So.
And the other part is are you hard on the 150?
We're okay. We're good.
If you're not hard on the 150, or needed to.
Couple more minutes, we're good.
I'd like to ask a question about the effort to, and I wasn't there any more than any of us were when these rules were made, but I could imagine in some way that the state of Vermont's giving Burlington Airport, whenever it started, having an idea that they wanted to be sure that their investment would result in improvements in value to the airport system. And if it's spent in an operating cost, which is operated by or paid for in the Burlington city budget, and the Burlington work for the Burlington piece, but if the state is going to invest money into a municipally owned property, I would suspect that somewhere in there was a mindset that they would have an improvement in value of assets, that the value of what Vermont would have something to show for their money versus the operation of their piece. Now, that may or may not have been what they thought, but that's certainly one of the questions that I have if I'm going to say, or we as a committee are going to say, we're going to loosen the strings on Vermonters, taxpayers' money. How do we know that there is an increased value at what we're putting in, which is probably why potentially why it's important to keep it focused on capital. So if you could speak to that, I would.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement to make. What I would say this isn't necessarily, taxpayer funds. Like, this is collected through the aviation jet fuel tax. And in terms of a budgeting process, yes, we are an entity of the city of Burlington, but we are an enterprise fund. And a lot of rules and restrictions, whether it's FAA or just how the nature of an enterprise fund runs, we have to spend what we make. And if we don't, particularly as it relates to FAA rules, we got to turn around and give that back to the airlines, or get their permission to spend it in different ways. So how I would respond is that flexibility of $500,000 would allow us to continue doing what we're currently doing, where in 8 years, the state saw a $30 million increase just in revenue. And then all that's line item and broken down in this report. So that 500,000, that's all we're getting from the state. And if we look at regionally or even nationally, we believe we don't have a firm pinpoint on this. It's one of the lowest, we think, that an airport is receiving in terms of allocations from the state. And Nick, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that we receive anything directly from the taxpayers of Burlington from that budget.
Correct. So the risk is on the taxpayers of Burlington. We have bonds, we have loans, we have lots of other things. So that risk falls entirely on the taxpayers of Burlington. However, any revenue or surplus, which is what Jeff was just saying, never can go back to the city of Burlington general fund. Just like the aviation fuel taxes has to stay in aviation, so too does the revenue, whether it's coming from state support or internal revenue, has to stay to improve the value to the traveling public and what's called the national airspace system. It can never leave that particular enterprise fund, which is our budget at the airport. We're entirely separate from the general fund of the city of Burlington.
And that improves the value of the airport, might lend that to the idea of why there was some level of restriction to capital pieces versus straight operational expenses. I don't know that. I just think that when I try to look at what comes to the committee, what would be the other side and why would the state want that? Why do you suppose it was there? To me, if I look at when the airport did have large planes, many more than it does today, much larger ones back in the early 90s when I worked on the other side of the airport. Now they went to all the small regional planes, and now we're going back to the bigger planes, sort of like centralized, decentralized. It happens over time. When I started there, US Air flew 6 fairly large aircraft in a day, or 6 flights a day. They had a cargo facility. They were moving air freight in and out of Burlington. That was also back when Rosendal and everybody else made their stuff there. So there was a whole different world. They had substantially larger planes than fly in and out today, back in the early 90s. So we're on a cyclical thing here. This isn't new. The jetways were totally different then than they are today. We're going back to the ones that we had.
And that's why we need
much
flexibility.
much better design, perhaps, and hopefully work a lot better. But I was there when it was a different world than it is, and then it's gone to. So not that I know a lot about it, but I know there's a lot of freight moving in and out. That I did have to move back in the day. So for whatever that's worth, that's when I try to decide or try to look at what it could be the other reasons. And that saying improved the value overall of the airport, and it certainly needed capital funds and a lot of investment then. The building that I was in isn't even there anymore. But then the maintenance was brand new when I worked there. And I watched it be built right across the parking lot from where I lived, where I worked.
We might have a new one coming too soon.
Now I would need a new one because that's got to be substantially out of date.
That's right. Yeah.
Representative Pouch, and then I'm not sure when you go.
Yeah, I think we answered.
Okay, Representative Wells.
Yeah, Nick, your job as director of aviation, does that cut into your side job as a rock and roll singer?
No, sir, it does not.
Glad to hear it, Nick.
Thank you. We try to have as much fun as possible as we take our jobs very seriously.
You killed it.
Thank you.
I'll bring that video next time we testify.
Appreciate that.
No, that's a one and done thing.
Yes, but yeah, on the surface, it seems like a couple things. One is that you've got enough capital projects happening all the time that this, shouldn't be a problem, but, I understand the flexibility, would make sense. And, you're looking to get clarity of how much income you guys are making in this fund. So then I assume to argue, hey, we would like a bigger piece of pie, if we're generating 3/4 of the pie or more, maybe we could have 2 slices rather than just one. So, all right.
I want to
Have
stress,
you approached the V-Trans or anybody at all with these conversations and gotten anywhere or not gotten anywhere?
yeah, and I know Nick is in regular contact with the secretary, so he can speak to that. Yes, the flexibility is definitely warranted. And I want to stress that we recognize that this aviation fuel revenue is critical for the overall aviation system in the state of Vermont. So we're not looking at this as a competition, so to speak. We just know what we have coming down the pipe in the next 5 to 10 years. And Nick, you can speak to that second part.
Yeah, to your first statement there, I think it is important. I think it can work when it's tied to capital, both to the chairman's statement and to yours as well. We do have other capital needs as well outside of the grant program capital. And that's really important as well, because it, like I stated before, when it's just tied to the FAA grant program, that could be tough for us in the next couple of years. We've had great conversation with the administration, Secretary Flynn, Michelle Boomhauer. And Jeff said it really well. General aviation in all aspects, small aircraft, the economic value of general aviation. This is why this conversation is tough for me. And I do pump the brakes every now and again, because I don't want to sacrifice, whether it's Burlington or other state airports. That ecosystem of general aviation is critical to the state of Vermont. And I can't say that enough. I was a flyer, am a flyer, own an aircraft, use Middlebury Airport all of the time and other state airports. And I know the importance of that. So it is really vital for this conversation to be all of us together to try to figure out a solution, especially when there might be some tough budgetary conversations already at the table. That's why Jeff was very clear. This year, we're not asking for anything. Last year, we didn't ask for anything. Yes, you are correct. Eventually, we would like to have that conversation, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I'd also say that those are questions that I made and not a statement of position in terms of how it may or may not have be why it might be linked to capital specific. I'm not sure where I stand yet on the overall issue, but I'm not declaring a statement on it. So we're still looking at it. Is that one more quick one before? Yeah.
Just wondering, in the packet you left us, did you include just like a top level profit and loss or balance sheet, just to give us an idea of the big picture of the Burlington Airport financial picture?
We didn't in this, but I'd be happy to provide that information to the committee.
That would be excellent. One more quick question. Sustainable jet fuel sounds like an oxymoron. What does that mean?
Nick?
It is still fuel being burned, right? It is still going into the engines, fuel being burned. There are greenhouse gas emissions. However, it uses different byproducts of fields and farms and oils versus natural oils versus the actual oil. So there is a reduction as this commodity and technology increases. There is a reduction in greenhouse gas emission. This isn't a BTV thing. This isn't a Vermont thing. This is a national initiative, really coming from the Federal Aviation Administration, that has been ongoing probably for the last decade or more to increase this commodity manufacturing in the United States to provide it. It, as you can imagine from the prior statement, very, very difficult to get. The pipelines aren't there. The plants aren't there, especially on the East Coast. It's much more prevalent on the West Coast. But ultimately, it does reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which when we look at our carbon initiatives goals and even our accreditation of carbon reduction, aircraft carbon is the most challenging thing to reduce. Buildings, we got that. We got wood, we got geothermal, we have electricity, we have renewable energy, both with Green Mountain Power and Burlington Electric Department. It's the greenhouse gas emissions from the fuel. A great benefit that we have is electric manufacturing of aircraft right here in our state, and that's going to be a major component to real reductions of greenhouse gas emissions.
Nick, thank you very much for your.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate it.
apologize for taking more of your time than you planned and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
going
Thank
to,
you
as a
all.
committee, take the break until 2:15. Then we're going to have committee discussion about that transportation alternative piece. And then Damien's going to come in at 2:30 and queue up tomorrow's